Well, like we say, our guest this morning needs no introduction. We are so excited to have him here on Express. But he is the longest-serving leader of the opposition in South Africa since the advent of democracy in 1994. Amongst his many notable achievements, and there are many, he is, of course, an attorney of the High Court, and he, of course, is a fellow at Harvard University as well. And this morning we're talking about just exactly how he became an accidental ambassador. Good morning, Tony. Good to have you here with us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much.
Now, before we begin, I must tell you, I looked at your socks this morning and I thought you are so perfectly dressed for Expresso, because a colleague of mine at Good Up FM always says life is too short for boring socks, and those are definitely not boring.
Especially when you wear a uniform, as I did, especially
Yes.
ambassador and lead the opposition, you wear a suit or a jacket and tie, without a tie this morning. You kind of distinguish yourself, and I always thought bright socks and bright ties. So that's what I try and do, just my little one-man rebellion against the sort of, the conventional stuff.
And I think that also says a lot about you as well, because I think people expect one kind of thing, one kind of, personality, and then you completely just, give them something different.
Well, you know what Groucho Marx said? He said, I've got a hidden camera, but the problem, that's where my inner beauty is kept. So I was quite often difficult to reveal it because I haven't got a camera to capture it. So I try and do a few minor acts against, the conventional stuff.
Wonderful. Well, that's, I must say, what I kind of picked up in your book when I first got it. I got it yesterday for the first time, and you are the reason why I got about 3 hours worth of sleep, because I literally could not put this book down. And it's entertaining, it's quirky, you learn so much. And for somebody who does not really know much about diplomatic life, it really has given me a lot of insight into that and an insight into your journey as well. But would you like to tell us how this book came about and your journey into writing it?
Well, it's strange because talking about Lady Thatcher, whose funeral was yesterday, a great figure, I met her in 1991 after she'd been removed as Prime Minister of Britain, leader of a party, and I was standing in a garden party with a colleague of mine, Dean Smuts, who's still in Parliament. And Dean and I were standing there, and Mrs. Thatcher came upon us, and I mumbled something of completely boring banality, and Dean, my colleague, said to her, "Gee, Mrs. Thatcher, it must have been very tough to have been dropped like you were as leader of your party and as Prime Minister of Britain," just a few months afterwards. And I realized at that, and Mrs. Thatcher then opened up and then told us, just how she felt about it. And it was almost like she'd been waiting to be asked the question, and no one had, because everyone was too polite. So when I wrote that little story inspired me to write this book, because I thought, nobody really knows what it's like behind embassy walls. Nobody actually knows what it's like, the personal journey I took. I was leader of the Democratic Alliance, leader of the opposition for all those years, and then you step down and you're nothing. And then along comes the president, Mr. Jacob Zuma, and he says, "Look, I'd like you to do something outside of politics." And after a lot of discussion, his office, which I described there, I better not go into it here because no one will read the book then, we land up, with an ambassadorship being offered, and it's Argentina. And I try and describe what was going through my mind, because on the one hand, I was the head of the DA, and then I've stood down and I've retired, and everyone said wonderful things about me. I'm not sure they say them now, but they said it then in 2007. And then suddenly, what are you going to do? I was 52 years old. I'm now 56. And and then this came up, and it seemed to be a kind of good fit. But I didn't realize when I took on the job just what a shock it would be. New language, new country, new job, new everything. And that requires, in your, at any age, as it requires a lot of trust. So I wrote about all those experiences. And then I actually wrote about, what do these people actually do? They just go to cocktail parties, sit in the back of cars, or do they do some work? And a lot of it was hair-raising. Some of it's, I hope, very funny, because it is funny.
It is.
Some of it's a bit absurd. And some of it's deadly serious. And I tried to capture all those experiences between two covers.
And you do such a good job in doing it. Now, I remember in the book you said to President Jacob Zuma, when he'd offered you the position as SA ambassador, you said, "Send me to someplace amazing." In your mind, what was amazing, and how did you feel when it actually turned out to be South America?
Look, Argentina is an extraordinary country, for good and for bad. When I came back, and I saw President Zuma, who said some nice things to me when I came back, and I said to him, I know why you sent me to Argentina. So President Zuma said, why? I said, well, it's got more challenges with governance and corruption than we have. So it has that. But here's a country that in 1 month produced the following. The Pope, Pope Francis, as I met him, was also
yes.
mentioned in the book, but I didn't know he was ever going to become Pope. Jorge Bergoglio, who comes from Argentina. Lionel Messi, for the 4th year in a row, is the greatest footballer in the world. The woman who's going to be the Queen of the Netherlands, Maxima, this month, is an Argentine. And we nearly had an Argentine who won the US Masters on Sunday. Well, he didn't in the end, but anyway. So that country's got huge outside talented people on an extraordinary scale, matched perhaps only like a country like South Africa. And then it's the same country that we were hearing earlier, Shakira.
Yes.
Shakira's boyfriend, De La Rua's father, was the president of Argentina, who I also met, Fernando De La Rua, and he ran that country into the ground in 2001. It posted the biggest single sovereign debt default in world economic history. So you have this crazy contradictions between fantastic people, best beef in the world, amazing wines, great warmth, and then bad governance, bad economics, and it's all in the same place. And of course, the other thing as a South African, I mean, one of the most amazing, and I described some of my journeys around South America, was to go to a place where we have, you know, the remnants of the most remote Boer community in the world. Because as you read on in there, you'll discover that in 1903, 800 Bitter Einde Boer families left Cape Town to go to Argentina. It's just unimaginable, because Patagonia is pretty bleak today, where they live in Commodore Rivadavia. You can't imagine, except when you read and hear the stories, as I heard, what it was like, you know, 105 or 8 years ago. And that story, that you should have a group of Boer families from South Africa who landed up in the southern tip of South America, alongside Nazis and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and all other kinds of extraordinary and some pretty awful people, you know, happened in a place that I was posted to on behalf of South Africa. So that was good. And then, of course, all the other stuff, because, you know, it's a sports crazy nation. I had the great gift of being ambassador. You know, I wasn't a great, I mentioned I was in the Curzon College 7th 15. There were 8 rugby teams. So here I land up being in the country that has 3 qualifying countries, because I was ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. All 3 qualified for the finals of the World Cup, and I've spent some time telling you about that and what football is like in Argentina. I mean, I did one night in going to the Bombonera, which is the football home of the Boca Junior, one of the 2 most famous teams, Maradona's team, incidentally. And you watch a 9-goal football match in 90 minutes in a First Division Premier League match, and the violence in the stands, that's shaking the stands, and the fighting and the missiles on the pitch, and that's like a picture of the country. And then you have the rugby. I mean, Argentina is the only country in the whole of America, starting in Canada, going right down to Uruguay, that plays internationally competitive rugby at the level of South Africa. So we had, while I was there, Argentina and South Africa and the All Blacks and the Wallabies coming into a rugby championship. So that was also amazing.
Wow. Well, there's so much to talk about, and it's definitely all in this book. And what I love about it is it's so conversationally written. You feel as though you're actually busy talking or just listening to Tony as he tells you these things himself. We're going to be talking about how to become an ambassador in 3.5 weeks, a little bit later on in the show. And of course, a lot of the other quirky and entertaining things in this book, The Accidental Ambassador, an amazing read. We'll be right back after the break.